Good morning, all of my enamel friends. Welcome to, I do this kind of maybe every year, every other year. I am putting together a list of all of the equipment and supplies that you need for your enameling journey. This should be especially helpful for those of you who are just starting out and it is so overwhelming. What do I need? What can I get away with not needing? Should I spend my money here? Can I afford to get something a little cheaper over here? I'm going to lay it all out. So this is going to be a fairly quick video, but the good news is I am going to have a link to a printable, which will be in the description of this video, which will include links to what I recommend specifically and links to where you can buy these items. I am in the United States, so my links are going to be really focused on that. I will include perhaps a few links to places you can buy things in Europe or other places, but primarily this is going to be the most helpful for those of you in the United States. It's just the way it is. So we're going to do two parts. The first part is going to be Cloisonné enamel. If you are just getting started and you need to know what you need to do work similar to what I am doing, you know what? Let's just dive in to the first thing on the list. Let me introduce you to the number one piece of equipment that you need, a kiln. Now, you don't necessarily need to have a kiln to do any kind of enameling, but to do the level of cloisonné that I'm interested in, it's really important to have a really decent kiln. So let me introduce you to mine. This kiln is called a hot shot kiln. It is made in the United States, and I have had this kiln probably for about 6 months now, and I have to say I'm in love with it. I love it. You don't necessarily need to have a hot shot kiln, but let me just kind of walk you through what is good about this kiln. First off, well, we should probably turn it on. It's plugged in. It does have a fan. You just heard that come on. And the fan is there we are. The fan is going to keep the entire kiln cool on the outside. And this is especially important if you're doing any kind of firing in your home, a home studio, you have children or pets. The entire kiln is going to stay touchably, it'll be a little bit warm, but it will not be hot. The entire thing, so every component on the exterior, the button is going to stay cool. And that's what the fan is doing. Let's actually open it and look how nice. It has a little bit of squeakiness, but I got to fix that. But this door is really solid to open. And the interior of the kiln is 7 by 7 by 7 inches, so you have a lot of space inside. This is kind of a removable shelf, which if it gets all terrible, I'm sure they'll sell you a replacement. And all in all, it's a really nice size kiln for enameling. Ooh. There we go, sorry. And then the other nice thing about it, let me zoom in a little bit, is it has a touchscreen interface, which is very nice. And to go ahead and fire, I'll show you, I only have kind of 2 programs, but it's very easy to program. So if I want to go and fire it, you can see I've set up some custom. I never even bother with these other 5. I hit the custom, and you can see I have 2 programs here. I have Sandra, and then I have one specifically for when I'm doing this really hard white opaque. It's set for 1520 Fahrenheit. And if I want to edit it or create new ones, it's very easy. I could just start this. It tells me what is happening. It's just going to go up to 1450 degrees and stay there for 4 hours. That is all. If I wanted to edit that, it's very easy, especially when I'm changing. If I want to do a little bit less or a little bit more, I just hit that segments button, and you can see there's only one thing that's happening, so that's it. The rate is 9999, which means just go up to that temperature. We're not doing it in increments, we're just going straight up. The temperature is 1450 Fahrenheit, and you can adjust it to be Fahrenheit or Celsius, and then it's going to hold for 4 hours and then shut itself off. And you can change these just by pressing them So 999, that's fine. We're set to 1450, good. And we're going to hold for 4 hours. That's just about as much as I ever want to enamel anyway. So we go forward, everything is good, we hit back, and then to start the kiln, you just hit start and then start again. I'm going to, well, I guess I'll start it. The kiln itself takes about, I'm going to say 15 minutes to come up to full temperature, which is great. And I actually am going to go ahead and stop it because I want to show you a few other adjustments that I have on it. So I'm going to stop it. It's not going to like it, but that's okay. And I'm going to go to menu because when we're doing cloisonné enamel or any kind of enamels, you really want the kiln to come back up to temperature the moment you close the door. You don't want it to be fooling around. And so, and this will all be in the printable. I've made a few adjustments to my kiln to make sure that when I close the door, it'll come back up to temperature in about 1.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes, you know, depending on how hot it is. So I go to my adjustments and I have two things that I have set. PID gain, I've set to 12, and I'll explain, and then dampening factor set to 1. And those things are basically, you're sacrificing a little bit of precision with the PID gain. You might overshoot the temperature by about 15 or 20 degrees, and that's actually fine because generally when it comes back up to temperature, you're pulling out the enamels. And then the dampening factor just means, you know, don't delay, just get back up to temperature. The moment you realize you've dropped because I've opened the door and pulled out the enamels, just go back up to temperature. So you may want to fuss with those just a little bit, but that is what's really nice about this is it has these adjustments. So there we have the beautiful Hot Shot Kiln. Now, I do actually have an affiliate link for you to buy the Hot Shot Kiln, but I assure you they have a great customer service, and there'll be a link with my affiliate link, but I know you can also buy them directly from the site and through Enamel Art Supply as well. It is a very reasonably priced kiln, and I highly recommend it. But if you're looking at other options, the high-end, really expensive, nice kiln is Vicella brand. I believe they're based in California. I've never actually, well, I had one, but it had too much draw and it kept flipping my electric thing. So I actually traded for a Paragon kiln, which is what I had for many, many years. They are fine. They have a little bit of trouble coming back up to temperature, especially if you're getting a new kiln. But you know, if you can sort it all out, it is a pretty decent option. It's about the same price as a Hot Shot. And then also Prometheus is a good brand. They're very small, at least what I've seen available in the United States. So, you know, the kiln is, I'm going to say, your most important, besides your brain and your creativity and your heart. It's the most important piece of equipment for enameling. So really take your time. What you're looking for is a kiln that fits in your studio. I like to have a little bit bigger than I need. That's why that Prometheus is very small. It would work, but there's not a lot of room to grow if you want to do anything much bigger. But look around and I'm sure you'll find something good. This is your #1 most expensive thing. So take your time and do all your homework. So now that you have your kiln, you're ready to start enameling, right? What else do you need? Let's talk about the materials you're actually going to be enameling on. When you first get started with cloisonné, you have a decision. Are you going to, well, you don't necessarily need these two, but the two most common bases for enameling are fine silver, and that is not sterling silver. This is 999 silver. So this is pure fine silver, or you can enamel on, I probably should have opened it up, especially when you're first getting started, you can enamel on copper. And both of these sheets are 22 gauge. Which is 0.644 millimeters, and that's kind of a good starting point. And I buy all of my, here's the Rio Grande, I buy all of my silver directly from riogrande.com. They've got really good quality. Never had an issue. Everything is very clean and pure and ready to go. So if you're going to start on copper, that's fine. If you're going to start directly on fine silver, that is also a good thing. If you are enameling on copper or even silver and you want it to be a little bit extra, I recommend getting some extra thick fine silver foil. And this is really great, especially if you're doing copper enameling and you want it to look like you've enameled on silver. This is 10 microns thick. Don't handle it like I am. And you can put textures on here. You can coat your copper with it and you'll get really great results. And this is a product that is only available at enamelartsupply.com. And this is what it's called. Obviously, all these things will be in the printable. So I use this even on silver because I like to be able to add a texture and it's really shiny. I love this stuff. So you can see I bought 25 sheets of it because I love it that much. And finally, we're going to talk about the cloisonné of the cloisonné wire. When you're first getting started, it's probably easiest to just buy ready-made cloisonné wire. It's one of the first things I'm going to encourage you to do is make your own cloisonné wire, but if you do not have access to a rolling mill, you are going, look, she sent me these little samples. You are going to want to purchase, this is another thing you need to get from enamelartsupply.com because she makes this wire and it is perfect. It comes in all these different sizes and quite honestly, I don't know that I would pick one that I like the most. Actually, this one looks good. They're all so similar that you may just want to get a couple feet of each, but you can see that they vary in height and thickness by such a small amount that when you're first getting started, I would get the tallest and the thickest, at least from Enamel Art Supply. If you're buying cloisonné wire from another supplier, go ahead and get as many different options as you can. Sometimes the other ready-made wires tend to be too tall, and so you're building up, and the wire is so tall that you're having to add so many layers of enamels to get to the top. That's really not worth it. And so with these wires from, I think this one looks like it's the tallest, 0.003 times 0.06. I don't even think I would use this. It's a little too tall for me, but you can buy the assortment and just see what you like. When you're not going to really tell the difference. So, but I tend to make my own. This is wire that I have made in my studio because I have a rolling mill. And if you have a rolling mill, there is no reason why you shouldn't make your own cloisonné wire. And I tend to make my cloisonné wire as tall as a 20 gauge piece of silver. So this is about 0.85 millimeters tall. It's not that precise. I eyeball it. But I've made this in my rolling mill by starting with round, this is 26 gauge, fine silver round wire. Will get you just the perfect. So if you have a rolling mill, just get yourself some of this. And I have a video on how to make it. It's very easy. And so it'll save you a little bit of money if you make your own cloisonné wire. But if you don't, enamelartsupply.com is where you want to get your cloisonné wire. So let's move along. After you've cut your shape, I generally like to work on a domed surface. And so you're going to need something to be able to make that domed surface. And quite frankly, the thing that I highly recommend is this wooden dapping block. It is a product from Rio Grande. I've had it for years, and it actually comes with 6 different mushroom caps. I only have 2. You can see there's only 2 that I use, the little one and then the big one, and I even mark it because I always forget which one it is. But this is really great for making your shapes, and I love it. You'll need some sort of a soft mallet, or a regular hammer would be fine as well. But if you're only going to get one dapping set, I like this wooden dapping set a lot. It's so convenient. You could also, if you're going to be working larger, they sell this one. You can see I used it to drill holes in the back, but this is also a nice wooden shape as well. And if you're going to go fancy, I don't really use, this is really heavy. It's the heaviest thing. I bought this for a project that I only wanted, I was doing things that were very long and I wanted to have kind of a tubular shape, but this is a really nice set as well, wildly optional. In fact, I look at this sometimes and I think, why did I buy this? But then I'm like, it's so pretty. Love it. I'm a tool fiend. So this is a nice shape. And I'm sure they make this in a wooden variety. You don't necessarily need to have the high metal dapping thing, but I just have this one. So I have tons of these different kinds of shapes. Honestly, half the time, if I wanted to make this shape, I got this piece of wood. This does almost the exact same thing, especially if you're working with fine silver. It's so soft. You can put this in your thing and then just kind of dap it onto a piece of wood. So that is what you need for that. And if worse comes to worse, you can also just put layers. If you don't have any of this, but you have a hammer, you can use layers of newspaper and then just gently, it takes a lot longer. You'll want one of these. So there we have it, dapping set. You've got your kiln, you've got your metal. Now you need to be able to shape and create the shapes for your metal. Of course, you can purchase discs and different kinds of cutouts from all the various places. That's a great place to start. But at some point, you're going to want to do a custom shape. And so the easiest and most economical way to create your shapes is to saw out your metal. And I have a very inexpensive, I don't have a very expensive saw blade, but I like this handmade saw blade because it has a slightly deeper profile. This will allow me to cut out almost any shape that I want. And I've had this knife. This is actually a really good holder. I got this years ago for all the different saw blades. And depending on the thickness of the metal and the intricacy of your design, you want to go a little thicker or a little thinner. I would recommend getting one of those assortment kits of saw blades, and kind of focusing on the 3 to 4/0 is going to be where you're doing most of your cutting, all things determined. So you'll also need, in addition to your saw blades and your cutter, you will definitely need a bench pin. This is just a cheap one, and a little bit of wax or a piece of candle to keep your blade from breaking. I also have kind of a custom thing that I made. Here, let me show you this. This is because I don't have a jeweler's bench, so I need to be a little bit higher. So at some point, a student made these for me. They're just risers that have my bench pin stuck to it, and I attach it to my table with one of these. So you could, this is homemade, but you can kind of see that it kind of keeps things up so I don't have to go down, because I just have a regular tabletop that I work for, and I use this all the time. So if you are handy with the wood, go ahead and make yourself one of these. Now, if you're just doing a lot of circles, I think a lot of the punches are kind of garbage, especially at the square or whatever, and they're really expensive. But if you're only going to get one, this Swanstrom disc cutter is amazing. I've had this for probably 12 years. I have the little plastic knob thing actually broke off a while ago, but it actually makes it easier to use because the handle was always getting in the way and you had to kind of scooch it over. But this, you just open and close it with your hands. But it does have a little plastic handle that will break off eventually. And it comes in, there's 2 sets available. This is the one in inches. So all of these punches come in, what is this? 1.25 inches. And then they also have one in millimeter, which I'd like to get the millimeter one, but this one is great. And it comes with all of this. If you buy it as a kit, you'll also get the center punches, which let you make discs, which is handy. And in addition, you'll definitely need a heavy mallet because you're going to be popping those through. And obviously, not obviously, but you'll also want some of the wax to keep these blades from binding. But this is an expensive tool. It's completely optional. You can saw out your shapes. You can, depending on the thickness of your metal, also just use a pair of shears. These aren't even for metal. These are just regular Fiskar shears. I'm not sure how good they would be at cutting out copper because it's a little bit tougher than fine silver. But if you're working in silver, you can cut things out with this. So this is optional, but I love it. Love it. And I've had it for years and I've kind of given it a lot of abuse, but it is still going strong. So, and definitely there's a lot of cheap, go for the Swanstrom, spend the money, because you're going to see this cheaper on Amazon when you go look for it, and it will be a piece of junk. So get yourself one of these and you won't be sad. You will need at some point some sort of file to do your edges with. I have an assortment of files that I have bought over the years, and as I've kind of evolved with my technique, I have progressively gotten more expensive traditional files. There's two kinds of files that you can get. This is a traditional file which works in one direction. I really like these because they last a long time, and once you get the hang of it, it's hard to go back because they take a lot of material off. They come in, this is kind of middle of the road. What is this? I don't even remember what size it is, but it's kind of for removing material. They come in different shapes. Don't buy this $150 set immediately. They have quite literally some very, very inexpensive diamond grit. This is diamond grit, and you can see it's a little bit different. It's kind of coated, and you can go back and forth like a nail file. Start with one of these, especially if you don't have a lot. If you have a lot of jewelry experience and you already have a good set of files, go for it. But do not blow a lot of, if you have a limited budget, don't go all out with files. These are kind of expensive ones right here. Get yourself either maybe one. If you had to get one good file, I really like this half moon shape because it has a nice flat edge and then a rounded edge, which is pretty much going to get you everywhere you need to go. And I would go with something a little long and medium size like this. In fact, I'd probably get this exact one. This is a number 2. It is neither too fine nor too rough. But if you're really on a budget, they sell these diamond sets. They have a whole variety of them, variety packs, and these are a lot more budget friendly. And to be honest, it doesn't, it's fine, especially if you're doing just the edges. So don't spend all your money on your files. That would be something you would later frivolously spend your money on. So, but if you have files, you're going to use them. If you're using the traditional files, it's nice to have one of these things that cleans the shavings out of your files as well. So here you have it. You don't need this many. You need either a small assortment or 1 or 2 good files, and you'll be good to go. We are going to just quickly talk about the actual enamels. I know I have talked for many hours about the different varieties of enamels. And when you're getting started, the first decision that you have to make is, am I going to work with leaded enamels or unleaded enamels? And let me tell you the difference of all of them. These are all leaded. I work exclusively in leaded enamels. And if you use leaded enamels, the lead gives you more variety of color, intensity of color. If you're interested in reds, oranges, pinks, those really warm colors, you want to be focused on using leaded enamels. And it's just, the enamels are not full of great stuff. Even the unleaded enamels, you don't want to be inhaling. And so whenever you're working with enamels, you want to be you want to keep your area clean. Wear a respirator whenever you're working with them in dry form, and keep washing your hands. And don't eat and drink right where you're doing your enameling. I'm constantly wiping things down. I do not let my pets anywhere near my enamels or my enamel work area. And that is the same for both leaded and unleaded enamels. So I'll have to do a separate video just about all the different kinds of enamels. But generally speaking, so I've decided, say you've decided you're going to go with leaded enamels and you're in the United States, your best bet to purchase your enamels is enamelartsupply.com. She's got a wonderful selection of enamels. And I recommend just getting like a sample kit. Most of the enamels that you're going to run into are pre-ground. This is a Japanese enamel, and so they will arrive something like this. You may also come across, and this is getting a little bit rarer, these are lump enamels, and so this is exactly the same. This is not the same color, but it is a turquoise. This enamel, if you get this, you're going to have a mortar and pestle and grind it down. There's a lot of benefits to using lump enamels, but not when you're first getting started. So just set these aside. If you got these, go ahead and get yourself some pre-ground. This is what it defaults to. 99% of the time when you order enamels, unless it specifies that it's lump, it's going to be ground, which is good. So you're going to get a variety of colors to try. Start with blues and greens, and honestly, just get yourself as many colors as you can and just start playing with them. The only other two kinds of enamel, these are all enamels. You need two things. You have to think about what's going to be on the back of your piece. It's called counter enamel. I like to use this unleaded 1990 Grisaille Black as a counter enamel, but you can also purchase counter enamels. You can use any color enamel as your back. It just has to, hold up to a lot of different firings, and that's why I like the black. And then also flux. I know it's confusing, but flux enamel just means clear enamel. And if you're doing leaded enamels, there's probably 15 different kinds of flux you can buy. Go ahead and just buy this one. This is Sawyer No. 3 Silver Flux. You will get really good results out of it. Not that you can't get good results using other fluxes, but this is the best. Just start, give yourself a leg up and get yourself Sawyer No. 3. And yes, got enamelartsupply.com. There you go. So you've got that's all we're going to say about the enamels, because that is its own thing. You've got a lot. We're finally ready to get enameling. Let's talk about all of the little incidentals that you need to get started. The first thing that you need is, generally speaking, your first couple of coats, the back and the front, are going to get sifted into place. So you need at least one of these. This is a 40 mesh sifter. And I like the bigger ones. They come in little ones, big ones, and even bigger ones. But just to get started, one or two of these 40 mesh, kind of large, medium size, I think this is a 2-inch, 2.5 inch, will be exactly what you need. And you can see that I label them, because this is one I use only for black or really dark enamels. But you don't need to do that. One will be fine. You just wash it out after every use. So you've got that, which will let you sift into place. You will need some A1 clear fire. You can get this from almost any enameling place. I got mine from Rio Grande. It is basically there's not much left. It's an acrylic medium that you paint on your piece. Obviously, you're going to need a little brush. This is nothing fancy. I have a No. 3 brush that I use to paint my clear fire on. It just adheres the enamel, and then it burns away cleanly in the kiln. So you will definitely need to get some of this. And then also, you don't need a giant one. Some Dawn or some dishwashing liquid is going to act as your surfactant. You'll watch a video about why you need to use that. So these are your glues, and you've got your sifter, and you'll also need to put all these little things in a cup. So you're going to I use these portion cups. These are, I think, 1/4 ounce portion cups that I buy on Amazon. And they're great for holding your enamels, putting your clear fire in, and they are just very handy. So you'll want, if you don't have these, you could use little spoons, or any tiny containers will be fine. They don't have to be these, but these are very handy. So let's talk trivets and kiln accoutrements. Trivets come in a million not a million, but many, many different shapes and sizes. Depending on the shape and size of what you're firing, you may need to get some custom kind of interesting shaped trivets. I always believe you can never have enough trivets, but when you're first getting started, what I would recommend is this is a basic 3-pronged trivet. It's just a couple of dollars and they sell them pretty much everywhere. And they come in smaller, medium, and large. I would just go for the medium. So this is just about 1.5 inches tall, and it's going to hold anything small that you put in it very well. So this is what I recommend. And I think they have something similar to this with these attached. That's also nice because this is self-contained and it lets you slide something under and just put it right in the kiln. If you're just going to use these trivets, you do need to put it on something to then get it in the kiln. And I really like, these are my new favorite go-to little holders. They have little holes in them, so they're lightweight. They don't work as much of a heat sink. And this is completely optional, but I love these, and these are just a couple dollars. These are kiln safe pads that I usually put on top. So here we go. This is what's happening. If any of the enamel falls off, it'll fall on here and not go through these holes and end up in the bottom of my kiln. So I use this as just to keep my kiln fresh and nice. And these are also a product from Rio Grande, but optional, totally, but just a couple bucks. So, and you have to put them in the kiln one time, but after that, they just stay like this in and out of the kiln multiple use times. Very nice. Enamel will not stick to them. So they are lovely. So we've got that. You definitely need some sort of a kiln spatula. You're going to have something to pick up your piece and put it in the kiln. And they have them in many, many shapes. They have forks. I like this flat one because I feel that with the kind of bases that I'm using, it feels very sturdy. Sometimes the ones with the forks don't feel quite as good for me. And the only thing that I have done is they tend to be like twice as long when you get them. I don't know why they think you want to be 5 feet away from your kiln or whatever, but I usually use my little jeweler saw, take it off the thing, trim it down to about, the length of my hand, and then jam this back on because I just feel like I have a little bit more control. I feel like the really long ones are too long. But if you like to stay further away from your kiln, you can do it. But so you'll need to customize this if you get this particular one. And then finally, I do use a little kiln glove when I open and close the kiln. Not 100% necessary because you're kind of going in and out, especially if you haven't, you're holding onto this. You're not very close to your kiln, but sometimes it's nice to have that extra protection. And these are special made. You just need one for your dominant hand going in and out. So there you have it. But as you get, whenever I see an interesting trivet, I tend to buy it just because you never know when you're going to need some interesting things. Finally, this is just a regular cheap pair of pliers that I use when things are hot right out of the kiln and I want to move something around. I don't want to be touching things with my hands. So I have this pair of pliers that I use to pick up things that are or may be hot. And I keep these by the kiln and they're not expensive. They're just whatever you got from Harbor Freight. So just have a pair of pliers. So that's all the stuff you need. Let's talk tools that you need to do your wire bending and manipulate your Cloisonné wires. You don't need all of these. You basically need 3 different kinds of hand tools and a decent pair of tweezers. So let's actually talk about the 3. We'll start with tweezers. These are luckily very cheap. Blue Heron, I think, has the best brand, and I like to use a straight tweezer. It's very fine, but a hooked nose is fine. It's basically, I'm going to be picking up my wires and maybe doing some really tiny, for really thin wires, some bending. So it's really just has to be comfortable, and see how nice and springy it is? It's perfect, and they're just precision tweezers. But still, these are the nicest. This is size 3C, a couple of bucks. Well, I don't I haven't checked. It's probably now $1 million, but last I checked, these were fairly reasonably priced. And then you need 3 kinds of hand pliers. I've got 5 here, but that's fine. The most important and probably where you're going to spend the most money is I like to cut and trim my wires using a pair of flush nose pliers. Rah, 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 rah. And my go-to brand right now is Lindstrom. Is this Lindstrom? Yes, Lindstrom. And they have these, you'll go and they'll have like 52 different kinds and they'll all look the same. And they are generally between $50 and $80 for a pair. But what you're looking for is you want to make sure it has a comfortable handle because you're going to be using this for many hours, depending on how much wire you're doing. And you want a very precise cut right here. The flush part isn't so important because our wires are so slender that if you have a little bit of pinch, it's not really going to affect it. But you really want to be able to put your thing down and trim really carefully. So Lindstrom is a good brand. I'll actually put a couple of options, but this is where you don't want to get the cheapest thing because they have some really crappy ones of these. So another thing is it's a little bit shorter. I'm not putting the microscope in this. The microscope is for advanced enamelists, but I do work under a microscope. So let me grab a long one. A long handled. This is actually the one that I started with. This is also Swanstrom. See how this is a little bit longer and bigger, a little heavier, but also a really good cutter. Everything's a little bit bigger, kind of chonkier. This would be perfectly fine to get started with as well. Probably the same price, but what I like about this is I can really work underneath my microscope and it's not going to be hitting that. So that's why I transitioned to these smaller tools. But something like this is perfectly reasonable. And it's just really all about having a really clean cut here and a comfortable grip. So that's where you're going to spend your most money. Now, these 3 are the same kinds. These are round nose pliers, and they are different in the fact, well, they're different brands, but we have basically a very small, I think this is smaller than a millimeter tip. This is probably 1 millimeter, and this is a little bit thicker. So you don't need 3 to get started. I would get the one in the middle and then go up and down as you decide what kind of cloisonné you want to do. But these are really great for making tiny little curlicues, little tiny circles or little squiggles. And this is this Lindstrom? Yes, this is also a Lindstrom. I think I got everything Lindstrom. And you don't necessarily need the most expensive one of these because it's not as important. I think this was, another Lindstrom. I wish all of my pliers had this exact handle because this handle is so comfortable. These are very, very fine. If you're doing really tiny work, you'll definitely want a pair of these. But of course, I will have links to all of these in the printable. This is kind of the go-to. Yeah, this one I believe is the Rio Grande default brand. I think this is just, I think $9 or $10. And I actually use these a lot for larger things, and there is quite literally no difference. I mean, besides the size. So this is a little bit thicker, but I use these and they work like a champ. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on your round nose pliers. And then finally, just a default pair of chain nose pliers. So you can see these are flat. They don't have to be really expensive. This is for cinching things closed, making right angles, just opening and closing some jump rings here and there. So you don't have to get the most expensive one of these. Of course, I've got an expensive one. This is Lindstrom. They come in sets, which is actually, they've got some nice things where you get one of each. It's very nice. I've got this on the list. This is a handy tool. This is an awl. There's many different kinds of awls. You don't need this specific one, but you'll constantly be, needing to, I'm reaching out to get a cheaper one. Here's a cheap one and my expensive one. They do the same things. Sometimes if you filled your little bail hole and you need to clear it out before you fired, you could do that. Both of these will do a nice scribed texture. So just having an awl for marking metal is an important tool. You can get a cheap one, you can get a more expensive one. You could use a nail that you found. So it just has to be something sharp and pointy will be good. And then finally for your wire bending, I tend to pre-bend my wires and I stick them on some double stick tape. So I also get you want some tape, double stick and regular stick. Scotch brand is pretty good. That is all. So, oh, and finally, for when you're making your wires, you need a bunch of round things. And I'm not going to get too much into details, but you don't need expensive dapping things. But what I have these in here for is because I tend to wrap my wires around them to get different round shapes because a lot of my work is fairly organic. So I have, honestly, Harbor Freight, get a cheap set of drill bits and then just jam them in a drill, and then you have all different sizes of things to wrap wires around. You could also use wooden dowels as well. They don't come in as many different sizes though. But so I just have a drill, a drawer of those ready to go. I don't think I've used these for dapping in years. They are just for the round shapes. So that is a handy tool. The final set of tools that you need to have is for grinding and polishing, everybody's favorite task. And there are just as many ways to get a really good grind and polish on your enamel as there are enamel artists. So I am just going to show you what I use in my studio. Well, I'm going to show you mostly because I actually do have a very large, expensive grinder. But to be honest, I only use it for the very first thing to save me a little bit of time. For the most part, this is going to be the second piece of equipment that I recommend you buying after your kiln. Hold on, let's go up to it. Oh wait, can we get up there? See this? Fordham, a flex shaft tool, is so handy. And I use it for so many more things than just grinding and polishing. Drill holes, there's a million things you can use with your flex shaft. And I have just the basic hand set here. I don't have the quick change handle. I don't need it. So I recommend that I hate to say it, a lot of people really like the jewel tool, but I feel that the jewel tool is A, more expensive than a good Fordham, and B, more of a unitasker. There's nothing wrong with the jewel tool. If you got the money to spend, it's very friendly, it's pretty quiet, go ahead and get the jewel tool. But if you don't want to get the jewel tool, I recommend just getting a really good Fordham, and it's just going to be a lot more flexible and you'll get a lot more out of it. And if neither one of those pieces of equipment are in your budget, never fear, never fear. You can go the hand grinding and polishing method. And I started the first 3 years that I enameled. I didn't have a Fordham. The jewel tool wasn't invented. I did everything by hand. And I recommend if you're going to be grinding and you're still going to use these tools, either you need a diamond grit something. And these two diamond grit sanding sticks, I sell them in my Etsy store. I have sourced these from the UK and these are really high quality and I'm very excited about that. And I'm going to be adding this red one into my Etsy store very soon. They actually come in 3, but I only have the 2. This is a 320 grit diamond grit. And this is a little rougher. If you're going to start with by hand doing it, you're going to want the rougher. This is 220 grit. I have to look it up exactly, but these things are great. And what I like about the stick is it really gives you a long stroke, and I feel like it's a lot easier to manipulate. So you don't need both of these, and they're kind of expensive. They're hard to find, and what's nice is also they're on the Velcro, so you can take them off. You could wash them. If you use this with water, they will last a very long time. So this is a good investment, especially if you don't have a big Fordham or a jewel tool. If you can't find these or you don't want to buy these, you can also get the same thing. They come on these they have these at Enamel Art Supply. I'm not sure if I got these from there, but they come in all different grits. This is the 200. It's the same material, but glued to a foam backing. And these are good. They're not as long, so you don't have the long thing. And I find that my hand, you can see, I was actually using these the other day, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I spent like 10 minutes and I cut the foam out so I could have something to hold onto, just because my old elderly hands cannot handle that. So these come in all different grits as well. So it's worth having. You know, I'm always like, I will try out any tool and see if I like it. But if you do end up getting them, let me highly recommend getting your X-Acto out and giving yourself something to hold on to with that. And we use these with water as well. It's the same material. So this is a good tool to have. Now let's talk about, I have also in my Etsy store a grinding and polishing kit that I sell, and let me show you what's in it, because you don't have to necessarily buy this kit. You may want to buy the kit, but you may not. But let me show you what's in it. The most important things in this kit are these three items in the kit. You get these are rubber mandrels, and that's why I say these rubber mandrels have 1/8 inch shaft. I unfortunately haven't been able to source them with the smaller size shaft, so they only fit the traditional. They're not going to fit a quick change handpiece, so just keep that in mind, but they're really handy. I've got two. One has the Velcro, so you could switch out from the lighter grit to the heavier grit. It's exactly the same as in the sanding stick, but attached to this. This will make short work of grinding and polishing your cloisonné pieces. It is amazing. In fact, with cloisonné, I start with these entirely in my own work. So they're very handy. And then also there's one that doesn't have the Velcro, because these sanding discs, these are available from Rio Grande. They're a 3M product. They actually come in, I think, two additional things, but these are the grits that I like. These are in microns. So remember, the larger the number in microns, the thicker, the heavier the grit. So we have 60 microns, 40 microns. These are my two go-to sets. I use these all the time. And then a little bit more finishing. This is a 15 micron and a 9 micron. So these are, I love these things. And these again are available from Rio Grande, as are these. And then also you'll definitely be wanting some polishing papers. Again, these are also available. These, I only use these two colors. This is grittier. This is technically, I'm going to say that in air quotes, 600 grit, and this blue is 1200 grit, but they're very soft. They're not necessarily comparable to a wet dry sandpaper that you get in the hardware store. They're much softer, and I love to use these for finishing with water my enamels. And two paint sticks. You'll just need those to wrap you just kind of wrap it around, and then you kind of can go like that. So that's what the sticks are for. And then finally, at the very end, and I don't always do a final finish, but having a little bit of fine pumice powder and a felt buffing wheel, completely optional when you're first getting started, but that also comes in the kit. Again, the treasures in the kit are these diamond grit things. So those are really nice to have. So I think that now, if you're a traditional jewelry artist, feel free to use any of those materials for finishing your enamels, but keep in mind, you really want to avoid dry mediums like the like a buffing machine, and the powders or the sticks or whatever, the polishing sticks, because that's going to work material into your enamel, which you won't like. But any kind of a wet grinding with water, a slurry, is going to be just fine. So feel free to experiment. Just because I use these specific tools doesn't mean it's the only way to get there. So if when in doubt, use what you have at hand and see if it works. But again, I love and this has a foot pedal, which I love. So you can, switch these out. Love the Fordham. So I believe that is all for grinding and polishing. I think that's everything. Now, I think that covers everything that you need to do cloisonné enamel. In the next video, we're going to build on what you need if you're interested in learning how to do chambre levé enamel the way that I do it, fusing the silver. The next video will be everything that you need to get started with chambre levé enamel. And if I've forgotten anything, I'll probably add it. There's going to be a list, a PDF, a link to it in the description of this video. So definitely check that out. And there'll be links to where you can purchase some of these tools. And if I've forgotten something, I'll probably go ahead and add it when I'm typing it up, because I can tell already, I'm sure I've forgotten something. But this should get you 95% of the way there on your enameling journey. I know it's overwhelming, but just a little bit at a time. If there's a craft center that teaches enameling near you, that is a great opportunity to go use all of their equipment, see what you like to use, and figure out if you actually like enameling before you buy all this stuff. Trust me, I'm guilty. I will buy. Half the pleasure for me for learning a new thing is getting all of this stuff. So I totally get it. If you have any questions about specific tools that you may or may not be getting, feel free to email me and I will answer your question as best I can. Again, thank you so much for supporting me on both my Vimeo and now my YouTube channel. And yeah, take care, everybody. I'll talk to you later.